Max Verstappen captured pole position for the sprint race at the United States Grand Prix, but it was by the slimmest of margins. Lando Norris was just 71 thousandths of a second away from taking the top spot in Austin, and the internal battle at McLaren is heating up, while Red Bull faces its own internal issues. We're going to break down everything that happened in this frantic qualifying session. Friday in Austin was dominated by McLaren, or at least it seemed that way. Lando Norris topped the only free practice session, then led SQ1 and SQ2. Everything pointed to the sprint pole being his. But when it mattered most, in SQ3, Max Verstappen showed up. Norris set a 1:32.214, a time that looked like provisional pole. But Verstappen, on his final attempt, lowered it to 1:32.143, a difference of just 0.071 seconds. After the session, Norris explained where he thinks he lost that pole. He believes he lost crucial time on his final flying lap because of the bumps on the track, a notorious feature of the Circuit of the Americas. He said, "We'd have loved to be on pole, but it is not a surprise for us to be just a bit slower than a Red Bull lately. I'm pretty happy. I just caught a few bumps a little bit wrong, but that is the difficulty of this track." Norris highlighted that in Sector 1, it's easy to catch a bump at the wrong angle or apply too much throttle over them, and that's where you lose those hundredths. Despite the narrow defeat, optimism at McLaren is high. Norris pointed out that the team's race pace is usually better than their qualifying pace, especially in hot conditions that wear down the tires, and Austin is very hot. While Norris was fighting for thousandths, his teammate and championship leader, Oscar Piastri, had a very different day. Piastri will start third, right behind them, but the time deficit was glaring. The Australian was nearly 4/10ths off Verstappen and 3/10ths behind his own teammate. For a team that looked so dominant in the earlier segments, this internal gap caught everyone's attention. Piastri himself was quick to explain what happened, and he didn't blame the car. He admitted the lap just wasn't good. When asked if he knew where he lost time, Piastri was direct. "Yeah, in quite a few places. I think a pretty scruffy lap, to be honest. I just didn't really get it together." He even said that in some ways he feels a bit fortunate to be third, given how messy his attempt was. Piastri isn't worried, as he believes the pace is in the car and it was just an execution error he can correct. Regarding the start, with the 3 title contenders at the front, he was cautious, saying Turn 1 in Austin is always tricky and he'll try to put himself in the right spot. This performance gap between the two McLaren drivers was the talk of the day. While Norris nearly snatched pole, Piastri was disconnected in third. The team principal, Andrea Stella, however, tried to calm things down and look at the big picture. For him, starting P2 and P3 is a good foundation for the sprint. Stella was analytical. "I think this is actually a relatively genuine representation of the competitive field. It is very close at the top, and it confirms that Red Bull has definitely improved their car. They are competitive now and can fight for victories at any kind of circuit." Stella also highlighted the positive. The McLaren car proved competitive in Austin, unlike other tracks where they struggled more. And, just like Norris, the team boss is betting on the race. He expects more tire degradation in Austin due to the heat, which, he says, should make the sprint more entertaining and less of a procession. And historically, the McLaren car performs very well when there's higher degradation. This sprint race has all the makings of a direct showdown between Verstappen and the two McLarens, with tire strategy being absolutely crucial. And so you don't miss any detailed analysis of this fight and everything else happening in the world of Formula One, I'm asking you to please consider subscribing right here to Formula News USA. It's the best way to support us. Since this channel is brand new and not monetized, our only goal is to build a community. The best way you can help us do that is by hitting subscribe and leaving a comment. Tell us what city you're watching from. When you comment, the YouTube algorithm sees that our content is relevant and recommends it to more F1 fans. It's absolutely essential for our growth. Speaking of Lando Norris and that internal McLaren battle, his performance in Austin isn't happening in a vacuum. There's a quiet tension within the team ever since the incident in Singapore, and it seems the consequences are being felt now. Even before the weekend began, Norris revealed he is facing internal repercussions at McLaren that will last until the end of the season. This is all because of that wheel-to-wheel touch with Oscar Piastri on the opening lap of the Singapore Grand Prix. McLaren, of course, is remaining tight-lipped about what those punishments actually are, which only fuels speculation. Commentator and former driver Martin Brundle offered his take on what these measures might be. Brundle suggested it wouldn't be anything that harms the team in their fight against rivals, but rather something to adjust the internal balance. He cited examples. Perhaps Norris would have to provide Piastri with a slipstream in qualifying at specific tracks. Or, if the team were in a development race, Piastri would get the new parts first. It would be that kind of inter-team thing that doesn't hand an advantage to other teams. Brundle noted that if it hadn't been Piastri alongside him in Singapore, the team would have cheered Norris's brilliant opening corners. The problem was that he touched his teammate. This situation raises a very interesting theory about the sprint qualifying result. One of the reports circulating suggests that these consequences might have cost Norris the pole in Austin. The speculation is this: if the internal penalty imposed on Norris is related to the timing of his qualifying runs, for example, having to wait for Piastri to complete his lap first, that could have made all the difference. On a track that changes quickly and with soft tires that have a very short performance peak, the exact moment you go out on track is crucial. If Norris was forced to go at a slightly different, non-optimal time, that could perfectly explain those 0.071 seconds that separated him from Max Verstappen. It's a theory, but it makes sense when the gap is that marginal. Martin Brundle also went further in his analysis, warning of something he sees as almost inevitable. He views the current harmony between Norris and Piastri as a scenario doomed to fail, not out of malice, but because of the nature of the sport. Brundle said, "There's a championship to be won, and they've both got a fantastic car at McLaren. And, of course, Max Verstappen is appearing in their rearview mirrors quite quickly in the last few races." Brundle's logic is simple. You've got two supremely competitive athletes working in a team environment. It's always going to go wrong. It's just a question of how the teams handle it. With Piastri leading the championship by 22 points over Norris and Verstappen threatening the McLaren 1-2, the pressure is at its maximum, and the Singapore incident may have been just the first sign of a crack. Faced with all this tension, how does the team boss position himself? Zak Brown, the McLaren CEO, was put on the spot. He had to publicly answer whether the team will or will not prioritize one of its drivers in the title fight, especially now that Verstappen is too close for comfort. His answer was emphatic. Brown rejected any suggestion that the team will favor either Piastri or Norris at this stage of the championship. He recalled that the team clinched the constructors' title in Singapore, but the drivers' fight is what dominated the headlines precisely because of the contact between the two. Piastri was clearly annoyed on the radio, asking for the positions to be swapped, but McLaren refused, claiming it was a consequence of Norris trying to avoid Verstappen's Red Bull. That decision drew external criticism, with figures like Mario Andretti saying the team was favoring the Briton over Piastri, even though the Australian is the championship leader. Zak Brown denies this vehemently, stating it's not in McLaren's nature to act that way. He used last year as an example when the team only prioritized Norris in his fight against Verstappen in Baku, already at round 17. Brown wants to keep things as they are, citing Norris's sudden retirement in Holland due to an oil pipe leak as proof of how quickly things can change. "We're one race at a time," said Brown. "Max is too close. Lando is one win, Oscar one DNF away. Where we're sitting right now is we're going to give both drivers equal opportunity." While McLaren manages its complex internal dynamics, another top team experienced a day of opposite extremes. At Red Bull, Friday was a story of heaven and hell, depending on which side of the garage you were looking at. On one side, Max Verstappen was clinching sprint pole position. On the other, Yuki Tsunoda couldn't even make it out of SQ1, finishing a frustrating 18th. And the reason was an error that the driver himself didn't hesitate to call pretty shocking. Tsunoda, a driver who was under immense pressure to secure his future in Formula One and at Red Bull for 2026, especially with the rise of Isaac Hadjar, saw his session end in the worst possible way. The team simply miscalculated the timing. He was sent back out on track too late for his final attempt and met the checkered flag before he could even start the flying lap. This resulted in his immediate elimination. The frustration was palpable. "The timing of the garage exit was not even close," said Tsunoda. "Something went wrong and we didn't have any opportunity to do a lap time. Very frustrating, because it's not under my control. It was more up to them than myself, managing the timing. It's pretty shocking." Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies had to come out publicly and take full responsibility. He offered a direct apology to Yuki. Mekies explained the strategy that failed. "We got it wrong. Honestly, we apologized to Yuki." According to him, the program was too tight. The team had a choice: stay on track and cool the tires there, or attempt a more efficient cooling in the garage. They thought they would have time to come in, do the procedure, and get back out. But it was only possible for 2 cars to do that, and we messed the cut. We owe Yuki an apology there. However, a deeper analysis, like the one we're doing here, shows that the team's timing error was just the final straw in what was already a complicated situation. Tsunoda's problem started earlier. The first issue was his own lack of pace on his first run in SQ1. He was 1.119 seconds off his teammates' time on the same medium tires. This mirrored a pattern seen in free practice. Tsunoda looked good on the hard compounds but struggled when he put on softer tires. It's worth noting he is still running the older spec front wing, although he himself said it shouldn't be that huge a difference. The second problem was the strategy. Red Bull opted for a plan that brought him back to the pits, likely to refuel the car, making him lighter on the first run, and for cooling. Many rivals, including Max, the McLarens, and the Mercedes, opted to stay on track. Tsunoda's stop in the garage was about 2 minutes and 8 seconds, which isn't slow, but it put him at the very back of a long queue of cars waiting to get on track. He even recognized the risk, saying on the radio, "It's going to be tight." The third factor was traffic. The queue was made worse by drivers who stayed on track between laps, like the Mercedes cars and Pierre Gasly. They were creating their 8 seconds of space, which forced those exiting the pits, like Tsunoda, to wait even longer. In the end, Tsunoda was the 5th car in a line of drivers who all failed to start their lap. The bottom line, Red Bull made a bad mistake with the clock, and Tsunoda is right to be shocked. But if he had put in a better first lap, or if the team had been confident enough in his pace to fuel him for the whole session, he likely wouldn't have been in that vulnerable position. On the other side of the garage, Max Verstappen was celebrating. He claimed his first sprint pole position of the season. The 4-time champion explained how difficult it was. "It was a nice qualifying, I think. Throughout the segments were quite close. It was not easy to go to the soft compound in SQ3 with no reference, but it worked out well." Verstappen also cited the challenging track conditions, with wind, gusts, and the famous bumps. This pole was a critical test. Verstappen's previous wins came at low downforce circuits like Italy and Azerbaijan. Beating the McLarens in Austin, a more traditional track, was crucial for his title credentials, and he passed the test. Now his focus is singular. "I will just try to have a good start and hope we have good pace in the race." And moving away from the immediate track action, let's go behind the scenes, where this year's silly season continues to echo. Mercedes was a major player in the speculation over the summer, and Toto Wolff finally decided to speak openly about the biggest rumor of all, the Max Verstappen saga. The Mercedes boss admitted in Austin that the team needs to learn from the mistake that was this narrative, which dominated headlines for months. The topic resurfaced when George Russell suggested that ongoing discussions between Verstappen and Mercedes were influencing his own contract negotiations. Although Max reaffirmed his commitment to Red Bull before Hungary, the speculation peaked when Verstappen was pictured on board Toto Wolff's yacht in Sardinia. Wolff has now addressed that incident head-on, admitting that the coincidence of both of them being in the same vacation spot obviously doesn't look good and was destabilizing for everyone. Wolff, however, insists there was no flirting on purpose, but that as a team boss, he had a duty to explore the situation, especially when Red Bull's dip in form sparked talk that the 4-time champion might be looking at other options. "The truth is, you've got to have that conversation," Wolff said. He defended his management philosophy, saying, "Being open and transparent is the best path forward. Sometimes it bites you a bit." But he was clear. But that's the past. Now everything is cleared, contracts are signed, and we move forward. And that moving forward has specific names: George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Wolff confirmed that both have signed new contracts, solidifying the Mercedes driver pairing for the future. It's understood that Russell's new contract is a multi-year deal, potentially a 1+1 with options, while Antonelli's contract covers 2026. Wolff emphasized that this pairing is the full focus and was always the aim, even throughout the trickier part over the summer. When Martin Brundle pressed him on the dangers of a 1+1 deal, reminding him how Mercedes lost Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari, and fantasized about a Russell-Verstappen lineup in 2027, Wolff shut down the speculation. Certainly good entertainment for everyone, but we don't want to create any rumors here. Kimi and George is what we want to do in the future and going forward. It's a good lineup. With that, Wolff attempts to publicly close one of the most turbulent off-track chapters for Mercedes. And so we wrap up our complete analysis of this hectic Friday in Austin. We had Verstappen beating Norris by thousands for the sprint pole, Piastri admitting to a scruffy lap, Red Bull making a shocking error with Tsunoda, and Toto Wolff trying to put a final period on the Verstappen saga. The sprint race promises to be a crucial chapter in this title battle. Now we want to know your opinion. What did you think of this qualifying session? Did Norris lose pole because of the bumps, or is there something more to it? Maybe those internal repercussions at McLaren? And who do you think takes the sprint? Leave your comment down below. Your analysis is fundamental to our community. If you liked this video and want to keep getting the hottest news and deepest analysis in Formula One, we have one simple ask. Please subscribe to Formula News USA. As this channel is brand new and not monetized, our only goal is to build this community from the ground up. The only way we grow is through you. Hitting that subscribe button and leaving a comment are the two most powerful free things you can do to support us. It tells the YouTube algorithm that we're here and that F1 fans are interested in this content. And it's truly the only way we can continue to bring you these updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.